The bells of St. Peter's Basilica tolled differently today. Not in mourning, not in celebration, but with a quiet, unsettling rhythm that echoed through the ancient stones of the Vatican, as if the very heart of the church was whispering that something had shifted, something irreversible. In the silence of ornate corridors and marble halls where secrets are carried like incense, a seismic tremor is rippling beneath the polished surface. The world may not yet fully grasp it, but inside these walls, the message is clear. The storm has begun. Pope Leo XIV, once known to the world as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, has stepped onto the sacred stage not simply to govern, but to purify. Since his election in May 2025, his hands have moved with a precision that has both unsettled and electrified the College of Cardinals. Where his predecessor sought bridges, Leo builds fortresses. Where others spoke in shades of compromise, he speaks with the steel of finality. And now, 6 cardinals, once pillars of unshakable influence, find themselves standing on crumbling ground. The world whispers their names in hushed tones. Men who shaped doctrine, who dictated the Church's moral compass, who for years walked the gilded halls of Vatican power with a confidence forged in decades of service. Men who once advised popes, presided over synods, and carried the burdens of global Catholic leadership. But today, they are being summoned not for counsel, but for reckoning. Reports swirl that these 6 men are under private investigation. Charges? Financial mismanagement? Administrative compromise? Quiet resistance to the purity of doctrine Pope Leo XIV now demands? Each one, once considered untouchable, is now staring into the eyes of judgment. And in the shadow of the dome of St. Peter's, no one can shield them. Yet behind this quiet purge stands another name, one rising not through ambition, but by divine design, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. In a Vatican where few are safe, Tagle's ascent defies the gravity pulling others down. Elevated to Cardinal Bishop of Albano, one of the highest titles within the College of Cardinals, his role has expanded swiftly, mirroring the Pope's own vision for a disciplined yet merciful Church. His voice, once marked by gentle compassion, now echoes with the weight of irreversible destiny. "There's no turning back from that," Cardinal Tagle declared. His words not simply an endorsement of Pope Francis's pro-poor mission, but an affirmation of Leo XIV's bold continuation of it, now with surgical clarity. The era of theological negotiation has given way to a new priesthood of absolutes. But what truly unfolds behind closed doors remains shielded from public view. Inside the Apostolic Palace, its sealed papal apartments reopened for the first time in years, decisions are being carved into the bedrock of the Church. This isn't just a reshuffle of roles, it is a restructuring of the very soul of Catholic leadership. Those who resist are quietly removed. Those who align are fortified. Is Leo XIV preparing to rewrite the architecture of Catholic power itself? For centuries, the Vatican has perfected the art of discretion. Conflicts that could shatter faith are hidden beneath layers of tradition, ceremony, and holy silence. Yet even within this ancient diplomacy, what is now unfolding feels different, sharper, more surgical, less forgiving. This is no political game. It is spiritual war. The 6 cardinals who now face possible removal are not merely administrators. They are architects of the Church's global voice. Their quiet dismissal would represent not simply personnel changes, but a total recalibration of Catholic leadership for the decades to come. Behind their titles are years of shaping doctrine, diplomacy, and pastoral care. But to Leo XIV, legacy is not license. Past service is not immunity. In his eyes, holiness demands accountability, and purity requires pruning. But who gave him this mantle? Who whispers these convictions into his ear? Is it merely the council of men, or something higher? Some within the Vatican believe Pope Leo XIV moves with a divine conviction, ordained for this hour to cleanse the house of God before darker storms approach. Others whisper of ambition, of consolidation, of a Vatican teetering between renewal and rupture. But as the Holy Father moves, one truth remains unshakable. Everything is changing. In this sacred upheaval, Cardinal Tagle emerges as both witness and participant. His promotion signals not just papal favor, but a deeper alignment with the reformist vision Leo XIV is unleashing. And his voice carries an eerie weight, not loud but resolute, as though he too knows what is coming. There's no turning back. Indeed, the die is cast. The winds of purification sweep through the marble halls, and the world watches, wondering, will Leo XIV's cleansing deliver the Church into its purest hour, or will the pressure fracture its ancient foundations? Inside the conclave chambers, long after the white smoke has faded, the echoes of whispered prayers and secret fears still remain. And as the doors close, one final question lingers like incense in the air. Have we just witnessed the beginning of a divine cleansing, or the opening act of an unspoken spiritual war? And so it begins. While the world's gaze remains fixed on headlines, on ceremonies, on the exterior majesty of the Church, few can hear the true battle raging in the unseen corridors of the Vatican, a battle not of politics alone, but of spirits, destinies, and the final alignment of power ordained for these closing days of history. Deep beneath the grand marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, within hidden chambers lit only by flickering candles and the muted glow of ancient stained glass, decisions are being etched into eternity. The removal of 6 cardinals, powerful, once seemingly immovable, is not merely administrative. It is surgical. It is deliberate. And it carries with it an invisible weight. For years, these men commanded vast influence. They negotiated with heads of state, shaped theological discourse, controlled the financial arteries of the Vatican Bank, whispered in the ears of popes, and oversaw the vast machinery of global Catholicism. But Pope Leo XIV, with a vision both feared and revered, now sees through every layer of prestige. Titles no longer protect. Seniority no longer shields. Loyalties are being tested in the fires of purification. The names of these 6 cardinals are still locked behind sealed Vatican documents. Officially, there is no list. But behind closed doors, their fate is being discussed with solemn finality. Rumors swirl like dark clouds. Allegations of financial compromise, secret alignments with ideological factions, subtle resistance to the doctrinal tightening Leo XIV demands. Each man summoned now faces the piercing gaze of a pope who no longer negotiates with corruption or tolerance of the old world order. And yet, what makes this moment even more unsettling is its quietness. There is no public confrontation, no open rebuke. Instead, there is an eerie, surgical calm. One by one, these towering figures are being quietly removed, reassigned to positions far from Rome's center, or offered early retirements under the soft language of personal reflection. But inside, everyone knows, the real cause is not age. It is not fatigue. It is not mere transition. It is cleansing. And standing at the edge of this unfolding drama is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a man whose name now echoes with growing spiritual significance. Elevated to Cardinal Bishop of Albano, granted new authority over evangelization, his rise feels less like ambition fulfilled and more like a divine positioning, as if heaven itself has chosen its instruments for this very hour. In the shadow of collapsing power structures, Tagle's humility becomes his shield. His alignment with Pope Leo XIV's vision places him not in opposition, but in covenant with the movement that now sweeps through the Vatican like a hidden fire. The Church is not simply shifting, it is being remade. But why now? Why this moment? And who truly directs these hands? For many within the global Catholic world, this feels like the unfolding of a mystery long whispered in prophetic circles. that a time would come when the Church would be sifted, purified, its ranks stripped of compromise before the final storm descends upon the earth. Some say Pope Leo XIV carries within him the breath of these prophecies. Since his earliest days as a missionary bishop in Peru, Leo XIV lived not for position, but for purity. His pastoral heart, hardened in the poverty-stricken streets of South America, has always burned for simplicity, for truth, for fearless confrontation with sin, both outside and inside the Church. Now, as Supreme Pontiff, that same fire consumes the very foundations of Vatican authority. There are those inside Rome who fear his moves. They whisper of dangerous centralization, of the risks of isolating powerful factions, of potential fractures that could widen schisms already threatening the global unity of Catholicism. And yet, there are others, silent but faithful, who sense something deeper, that this is not a man acting alone, but a vessel driven by a higher calling. The signs are everywhere. Even the reopening of the papal apartments, sealed for over a decade, carries with it a strange prophetic symbolism. Pope Leo XIV walks where his predecessors refused, as if reclaiming not just rooms, but authority itself. Where others avoided the trappings of papal grandeur, he re-enters them, not in pride, but in command, as though to say, the chair of Peter is no longer in retreat. But behind these decisions lies an even darker question, one few dare to voice aloud. What unseen forces are at war within the Church itself? What ancient battle is now reaching its final stage behind these hallowed walls? Because this is not only about leadership, this is about purification before judgment. There are whispers, hushed, fearful, that the Church is being prepared for a global trial, one that will separate true faith from the corruption that has festered in the shadows for generations. Financial scandals, moral failures, spiritual compromises, all tolerated too long under the banner of mercy. But now, Leo XIV's papacy signals that mercy without discipline is no longer acceptable. It is as though the Holy Spirit himself has issued a decree. Enough. The removal of the 6 cardinals is but the first tremor. More names may follow, more titles may fall, and even those who once saw themselves as untouchable now attend private meetings with pounding hearts, wondering if their names are next to be whispered before the papal throne. And still, through it all, Cardinal Tagle stands, not as a threat, but as a quiet instrument of continuity. His loyalty to Pope Francis's mission to the poor remains, but now it is fused with Leo XIV's demand for accountability. In this, Tagle has become both bridge and sword, carrying mercy in one hand, but standing firmly within the new discipline Leo requires. Some say it is divine providence. Others say it is the setup for an even more shocking future. Because the EEI question now hangs over the Vatican like gathering thunderclouds. Could Cardinal Tagle be positioned not merely as an ally, but as a successor? Could this cleansing be setting the stage not only for renewal, but for a papal line of unprecedented spiritual resolve, one that may carry the Church through the apocalyptic fires many believe are fast approaching? And if so, is the world ready? Because as these moves unfold, the Vatican is not simply reorganizing, it is bracing, preparing. The tremors we see are but the prelude to greater shakings ahead. And in this hour, every decision echoes with eternal consequence. The house of God is being swept. The idols are being overturned. The hidden are being exposed. The unrepentant are being cast down. And still the world sleeps, unaware that behind those timeless Vatican walls, the final chess pieces are moving into place. As dawn rises over Rome, its golden light cuts through the ancient pillars of St. Peter's Square, but beneath that brilliance lies an ominous undertone, one that only the spiritually discerning can feel. The bells still ring as they always have, yet to those who listen closely, their resonance carries a tension that words fail to capture. The Vatican is breathing differently now, and it is not the breath of comfort, but of confrontation. Within the Apostolic Palace, behind thick wooden doors engraved with centuries of history, a private assembly unfolds. The voices inside are low, deliberate, almost whispering, not out of reverence, but out of fear. For in these chambers, the Pope's intentions are being executed with quiet finality. The names of 6 cardinals have already been delivered to the Holy Father. Their futures now hang by invisible threads, dangling above a pit of irreversible consequence. Outside, the cameras see none of this. The press reports carefully orchestrated statements about unity, renewal, and mission. But inside these sacred halls, the reality is far more chilling. A spiritual purge has begun. The Church is shedding its compromised skin, and it is not doing so gently. Some of these cardinals were architects of compromise. They sought alliances with global elites, entertained modern ideologies, and blurred doctrinal lines in hopes of making the Church more relevant to an evolving world. But Pope Leo XIV has no patience for relevance that sacrifices righteousness. His eyes are fixed not on public approval, but on divine accountability. For years, these men wielded power without question. Their hands reached into the financial arteries of Vatican banking systems, into global diplomatic channels, into theological commissions where doctrine was quietly reshaped. They brokered deals, secured allegiances, and whispered into the ears of politicians who sought to use the Church's influence for temporal agendas. And now, suddenly, silently, they are finding their empires crumbling beneath them. Their seats at the table are being pulled away. Their voices, once thunderous in ecclesial debate, are reduced to faint echoes. Their allies, once emboldened by shared ambition, now distance themselves, each man wondering how far the Pope's cleansing hand will reach. But even as these 6 cardinals stare into their impending exile, another name rises higher with every passing day. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. His ascent is not accidental, nor is it purely political. No, his rise feels like something far older, far weightier, as if his footsteps are being guided by an unseen hand, moving him piece by piece into the center of a design only heaven fully understands. Tagle's promotion to Cardinal Bishop of Albano is not simply ceremonial, it is strategic. It places him within the inner circle of authority, closer than ever to the papal office itself. And yet, he wears this elevation not with arrogance, but with a quiet, almost haunting humility, as though he too senses that his role in this unfolding drama carries eternal consequence. In private audiences, Pope Leo XIV confides in him. They speak of purifying the Church, of restoring what has been lost, of preparing the bride of Christ for the days of great shaking still to come. They do not speak only of personnel changes. They speak of war, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against the ancient forces that for centuries have sought to pollute the purity of God's house. The enemy has long infiltrated the highest places, corruption disguised as diplomacy, greed veiled as stewardship, compromise presented as compassion. These forces have built invisible thrones within the Church's leadership, thrones now being violently overturned by Leo XIV's hand. And yet, even as these idols fall, the battle intensifies, because powers outside Rome are watching. World leaders, financial moguls, globalist architects who once relied on the influence of these compromised cardinals to weave the Church into their expanding networks. They now feel the tremor beneath their own foundations. The Vatican, once seen as an accessible partner in global agendas, is slipping from their grip, and that terrifies them. Backroom meetings are being held far from Vatican walls, quiet phone calls between distant embassies and power brokers. Questions are being asked that none dare speak publicly. What is Leo XIV planning? How far will he go? And who, if anyone, can stop him? For within these questions lies a terrifying reality. The Catholic Church is no longer being managed, it is being purged. Some call it dangerous, others call it necessary. But the most discerning voices recognize something far more profound. This is prophetic. In ancient texts, the purging of God's temple always precedes one of two outcomes: judgment or revival. Cleansing is never neutral. It is preparation for something far greater. And in the eyes of many within the Church, Leo XIV's actions bear the fingerprints of divine orchestration. The scriptures warn of a great falling away, a sifting, a separation of wheat from tares. And as these 6 cardinals quietly step into their exile, many are beginning to whisper, "Is this the sifting?" The global Catholic faithful watch with mixed emotions. Some rejoice, seeing in Leo XIV a long-awaited sword of righteousness finally drawn against decades of compromise. Others fear that these bold moves will trigger schism, fracture alliances, and weaken the global unity of the Church. But unity at the expense of holiness was never true unity. As Leo XIV continues to advance his cleansing mission, the true test looms just ahead. What happens when the next tier of leaders is called to account? Because the 6 cardinals are only the beginning. There are others, many others, whose records, whose alliances, whose secret sins are already being reviewed by those tasked to bring reports directly to the Holy Father. Even now, new investigations are quietly expanding. Private audits of Vatican finances are underway. Secret correspondences are being reviewed. Networks of influence, stretching from Europe to Latin America, from Africa to Washington, are being traced. The Holy Father's demand is simple: no more compromise. And in the face of this relentless march, every man wearing red now wonders in the secret chambers of his soul, am I next? And still, the bells continue their rhythm. As night falls over Rome, the glow of the city lights dances against the stone walls of the Vatican. But behind those cold, ancient stones, the tension thickens like incense filling the air before judgment. The Holy See is no longer a place of quiet administration. It has become a battlefield disguised as a sanctuary. For every cardinal that falls, for every reassignment cloaked in polite phrases, there are silent screams echoing through the hierarchy, whispers in corridors, secrets traded like currency. Men who once stood shoulder to shoulder now refuse to meet each other's eyes, afraid that any hint of nervousness might draw the gaze of the Supreme Pontiff. Pope Leo XIV walks these marble corridors like a man carrying the full weight of heaven's decree. He speaks softly, but his silence strikes harder than his words. Each decision he makes feels less like governance and more like the unfolding of something preordained, as if he himself is only a vessel moved by invisible hands directing the final stages of a divine confrontation, a confrontation centuries in the making. And still, at his right hand stands Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Many outside the Vatican see only his humility. But those within these inner circles now see something far more unsettling, a man whose rise feels almost prophetic, as though the very currents of spiritual warfare have lifted him from the outskirts of Manila to the epicenter of Rome's greatest spiritual cleansing. Together, Leo XIV and Tagle move with a unity that defies every faction, every agenda, every whispering network that once manipulated the inner machinery of the Church. But deep beneath this surface, darker currents swirl, because not all who wear the garments of holiness serve the same kingdom. Hidden forces, both human and demonic, have long nestled themselves into the Vatican structures. They are not merely cardinals or clerics. They are men who long ago traded spiritual conviction for earthly power. Men whose true allegiance lies not with the gospel, but with ancient secret alliances stretching back into the hidden corridors of world power. For decades, they infiltrated the Church's leadership, quietly reshaping its financial engines, embedding themselves into its diplomatic arms, ensuring the Church served not only heaven, but global empires. And for decades they succeeded, until now. Leo XIV's sudden and unexpected rise blindsided them. His election was not their plan. His cleansing reforms were not part of their design. And now, as their carefully built structures collapse, desperation sets in. Some within these circles are now exploring the unthinkable. In hidden chambers outside Vatican walls, far from the eyes of the faithful, a conspiracy is forming, not just to resist Leo XIV's reforms, but to end them. The plot does not involve political debate. It involves something far darker. A betrayal so ancient, its roots stretch back to the very beginnings of spiritual rebellion itself. And yet, while these enemies gather in secret, something even more mysterious is unfolding. In a room deep within the Apostolic Palace, a room sealed from public access for over 700 years, Pope Leo XIV recently stood alone before an ancient artifact long hidden from even the most senior members of the College of Cardinals. It was not merely a relic, it was a sealed scroll. A scroll carried secretly for generations through the papacies, rumored only in fragmented whispers as the hidden instruction of Peter. Unlike the commonly known archives, this scroll contains a prophecy, one protected by a select handful of popes who believed the world was not ready to hear it. Until now, Leo XIV stood before it. The weight of centuries seemed to rest on his shoulders. The scroll's fragile parchment, untouched for generations, trembled as it was slowly unsealed by his hand. What was written inside was not a mere vision of doctrinal purity. It was a map, a prophetic blueprint detailing not only the fall of corrupted leadership, but identifying by name certain cardinals who would rise as false shepherds in the final days. It described secret alliances between elements of global finance, politics, and even technology, men who would seek to control the church and merge it into a counterfeit global faith, preparing the way for a future false messiah. And shockingly, at the very bottom of the scroll, stood a single warning written in trembling ink. When the sixth is cast down, the man of Judas will rise from among you. The sixth. 6 cardinals now face removal. The prophecy was not symbolic, it was literal. As Leo XIV read those words, a terrifying realization struck him like lightning. The removal of the 6th cardinal was not the end of the cleansing. It was the trigger for the emergence of a much darker force, already hiding in plain sight. Someone within the remaining College of Cardinals, someone trusted, someone beloved, carried within him the spirit of betrayal, destined to lead the final deception. A man not from outside the church, but from within it, a Judas. Even now, that man smiles. He dines with the Holy Father. He prays before cameras. He delivers homilies that soothe the public ear. And yet behind his polished sermons lies a soul sold long ago to powers that hunger for the seat of Peter. Not to serve, but to rule. The fee. Conspiracy was never about opposing Leo XIV. It was about replacing him. The 6th removal is not simply a cleansing, it is an activation. And as the final days of this Vatican storm approach, a dark and almost unspeakable twist looms ahead, one that not even the most faithful were prepared to imagine. The betrayal is not coming from the world, it is coming from the inner circle, from one who will soon present himself as a savior. But speak the words of the dragon. The stage is set. The trap has been laid. The final battle for the soul of the church has begun.